Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Saray and I love to share all things planning, budgeting, organization, and lifestyle. And if you have been subscribed to my channel, welcome back and thank you so much for your continued support. If you're new to my channel, I'd encourage you to subscribe. I try to post videos every single week. Today's video, we're going to be doing a walkthrough of my July budgeting setup. And I know I said I had some explaining to do in the last video. I also have some explaining to do in this video because I had mentioned that I was going to be setting out my budgeting in my A5 ring agenda. However, I've since decided to scrap that plan because it just wasn't going to work. I need a lot more room and I don't know. So I decided to stick to my original plan. So my original plan was to use the Erin Condren monthly planner that just launched during their monthly planners launch. I think it was sometime in early July, maybe June. And I ended up getting that planner so that I could use it as my budgeting setup because there's so many different features of the monthly planner that you can use to really make it your own. So that was the plan. Then I veered away from it for a bit, but now I am back on track to really make sure that I'm maximizing and setting up all of the different sections for my budgeting that I was craving in the petite budget book that I wasn't able to get just because of the lack of room. So that's really the main reason why for me switching to this planner system is I need more things to track and I need more space to be able to do it. So I hope that you enjoy this video. I hope it gives you some ideas on how you can set your budgeting up and see how I do things. I know that's helpful for me when I see other people do certain things because I may pick up a thing or two that can really help me or make the difference for me and my budgeting. So thank you so much for joining me. Let's go ahead and jump right into the walkthrough for the month of July. I haven't fully set up my whole planner yet, so I'll do another walkthrough once some of the additional pages are set up, but I really just wanted to focus on my July because of this has been really the biggest change. So I did take out the folder that comes in the back and I did add a coil connector here so that I could move it around. And I also keep my check register in this pocket. So my check register really keeps track of all of my balances within my checking account so that I know that I have enough to cover the transactions that are coming up, any of the automatic payments and things like that. So just one thing to mention when it comes to budgeting is that your checking account balance, it's not your budget. Your budget is really your budget. It's your forecast of how you're planning on spending for the month. And the checking account is, you know, do you have enough to cover those payments that are coming through? So you kind of have to track two things at the same time in order to really make it work. So that's my check register. And then this is the cover page. And then I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the July overview. So this is the month of July. I'm really using this section for all of the bills that are due, whether they are recurring bills, whether they're automatic bills, or even sinking funds that are due. So I just have a little checkbox and the name of the bill. I don't have the amount because I go into more details in the subsequent pages. But I do include the sinking funds. So for example, I had 2 sinking funds coming out this month and I did highlight these here so that I would call them out. So we had like our property taxes come out this month. And then I also had a homeowner's insurance for one of the properties that we own. I also included paydays and I also included here my personal training sessions. Even though I pay in bulk, I do a lump sum payment. I buy a 12 pack of PT sessions at a time. So that's 3 months. I still want to track them here so that I know when the next pack is due. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. And then I jump into the dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over so that we can focus on the dashboard first. And I have already closed out my July budget. So that's why everything is pretty much checked off, etc. So here up at the top, I'm still tracking my goals. I like this part because I can limit the goals to either just one, or if I want to do 3, or if I want to do more, you know, it just gives me more flexibility. I felt like with the petite budget book or the budget planner, it had the 3 circles up at the top, so it forced me to create 3 goals, even though sometimes I may not feel I feel like creating 3 goals, it might be too much. But I did go for 3 goals this month, and the first goal was to restart the budget system. Now, just because I restarted doesn't mean that it went well. I went off the deep end. I was spending like it was nobody's business, but at least I tracked everything and I know where I am, and I have the foundation to start August up again. So that's the plan. Then the next goal was track all transactions, which I did. I did really well with that. And then calibrate and close out the budget, which I did recently. I calibrated and closed out everything. Now, the other things here are important dates and important projects. Those are left as is. I think they still work for a budget planner. Just remember, this is a monthly planner, so it's not really specific to a task like budgeting or project planning, but it's pretty versatile, so it does give you the flexibility to use it for all those things. So important days for us this month were we had our family visit from California. So they were here and they were staying with us for a little bit, so we needed to do a little bit of home prep, which was going to cost a little bit of money because we needed to get certain things to prepare the house. So that went here in the important projects section. And then I had the sinking fund dates as well. And then we are still working on our bed replacement. We haven't finished that. I think I mentioned that in the last video. We ordered a bed and we need to exchange it for something else. So it's not going to cost us anything extra because it's part of the warranty, but I do have it here as a task for the house that we need to do. For tracking, this part right here didn't go very well. I mentioned recently that I'm not very good at habit tracking, so I had kind of gone back and updated it. So I think I might still use it, but to just track daily that I've updated my planner, but not things like no spend days. I'm not good at that. You know, if I need to make an expense, I'll make the expense. So I don't like those sort of limitations for me. So I'll probably change that for my next budget. Here is the budget overview. So I have 3 pages of budget overview coming up, and I've basically broken them down into specific sections. And before I jump into these sections, I actually have these same sections organized in the electronic version of my budget, which I use the EveryDollar app. With the EveryDollar app, I can really take a look at my budget ahead of time, and I can start playing around with the numbers and switch things around. That way I don't have to keep, you know, erasing numbers if something doesn't add up, or it just does the math for me. So it's just a little bit easier to set up the budget, those numbers, and then I just transfer them into my planner. And the way that I have it organized on EveryDollar is exactly the same way that I have it organized in my budget overview pages. So let's go ahead and jump into that budget overview. As you can see, the top section is the income. So I just have the income, how much is planned, what was the actual income, and then the difference here. And then I did add like this little check mark section just in case I wanted to check off something. I don't use that for every single section, but I'll still leave it there just in case. And then I move into the sinking funds. So these are just sinking funds that are actual bills. And I've talked about these in my previous budget videos, but for those of you that may not be familiar with sinking funds, these are bills that are not due every month, but you want to set some money aside every month so that when they are due, you do have the money available there. So one example of those was our homeowners insurance. No, I'm sorry, it was the property taxes for this month that just happened in July. So our property taxes are due twice a year, in July and in December. And I try to set aside $360 every single month so that by the time that bill comes around, we have it. As you can see, that did not happen in July, but that's okay. We'll just move on. I still recorded it here. And then here on the bottom, I have savings for emergency funds savings. And I do have other sinking fund categories where I save things like for vacation, etc. So that is the first page of the budget overview. In this second page, I actually have the monthly bills. So I have everything that is due every single month. So for example, we have our mortgages, our HOA, cell phone, subscriptions, etc. So I have the total that is planned, the actual, and the difference. So that's really across the board in every single column. Then I have a debt section, and I just broke it down into the 3 types of debts that I have, which is credit cards, student loans, and car payments. And I was debating whether to add the due dates here, but I don't really need it right now because I have it in the monthly view as well. So I don't, and I know when they're due, so I don't have like a ton of bills, so I can remember when everything is due. So I kind of just left it like that. And then here I have the monthly variable expenses. So these are things, so I've boiled down these categories quite a bit just from my experience in budgeting. I think too many detail categories, at least for me, do not work out, and they can actually be a little bit of a detriment. So for example, food. I used to break it down into groceries and eating out, but what happened was that whenever we got really, really busy, we relied heavily on eating out, and we didn't go grocery shopping as much. So inevitably, our eating out category was always going over, and our grocery category was either the same or we never went over. So I decided to just combine the two. So I just call it food. That way, if I do go over on the eating out category, I don't feel bad, or I'm not beating myself up. As long as we are staying within the overall food budget, it's good. That way I can allow for any sort of things that life throws at us that I need to just, I need to make accommodations for because life happens. So then I have personal care. These are all things like toiletries, beauty, all of that is very generic in personal care. So I just throw everything in there. Personal miscellaneous is just any other random things I want to buy. So it could be like things for my office or just little knickknacks, whatever it is. And then entertainment. So that is the breakdown for these. Then the third page of my budget overview, I added one additional section, which is monthly business expenses. So I do have my, Saray Bailey business. So I do have a section here for that, which I didn't have before. And I just kind of like seeing it here. And I also included the sinking funds, other. So these are the other sinking funds that I want to save for. Things like medical, dental, vision, Christmas, birthday, and anniversary gifts. Things that don't necessarily have a due date, but I still want to save for throughout the year. And then at the bottom here, I just have my monthly totals, so income, expenses, and the difference. This next page is the sinking funds ledger. So essentially, I'm just keeping track of all of the sinking funds that I have, including the bills, sinking fund bills, and sinking funds other, so like the lower priority sinking funds, just all listed here so that I can keep track of how much I'm adding and how much I'm deducting from it, and then a running balance as well. So it's kind of just like a high level overview of how much I have in each category. As you can tell, July also didn't go very well because it was like my trial period for setting up this budget, and it was a mess. But anyway, I have the structure here for next month. All right, so the next few pages are set up as transaction trackers. So this is where I track all of my transactions, and there are 3 different areas where I track transactions. One is here. The second one is through my check register that I showed you earlier. And then the other one is through any cash purchases. If I'm using a cash envelope, I do have a little tracker for each of the categories within the cash envelope itself. So those are the three separate areas where I track all expenses, all variable expenses. So I have it set up here, however, with date, expense, the category, the method. So this is a big one because the method is, how did I pay for this expense? Was it cash? Was it a credit card? Because I still use them from time to time. And the total amount. And I added this little check mark here just in case. So what ended up happening is, because I was a little bit off the deep end at the beginning of July, I went back to all of my credit card expenses and transactions, and I just added them here. So everything that you see here is basically a credit card transaction that I did. That was the extent of any sort of transaction tracking that I did for this month in here. But then what I did was, because I have those three separate areas, I needed to consolidate them. So this page is the total expenses per payment method. So I have all of my variable categories that I would spend money on. And then I have how much I spend total per category for all of these per category in the different payment methods. So for example, in credit cards, how much I spent in home purchases in credit cards, how much came out of my checking account, maybe I used my debit card for that, and how much I used in cash. Zero. As you can see, I did not do any cash envelopes this month. I haven't actually done them in probably 2.5 months, maybe 3. So I'm gonna get back into it, I promise. And then I just have the total here. So I have how much total I spend for payment methods. And then the other thing that I added here is a weekly check-in. And because I was a little bit delayed with my budgeting, I did not spend a ton of time checking in this month either. I sort of went back and added this structure just so that I knew what to do for August. So I took it kind of for a trial run. So my weekly check-ins consist of each week of the month. So this would have been from July 1st through the 6th. All of my variable expense categories, how much I spent, how much I would have had remaining if I had set a target, which I didn't, and then any notes related to that purchase, to those expenses. So for example, for home purchases, we spent $376, which, you know, it's a little bit out of the norm for us. So I wrote down the reason why, and it's because we were doing like house prep for family staying over, etc. And the same thing for the second week, which would have been from July 8th through the 13th. The third week, let's not talk about it. And then I didn't do a setup for week 4, and because I wasn't gonna go back, I'm not gonna bother doing that, but I already have that. So in the month of July, I'm going to be setting up these same weekly check-in boxes so that I can go ahead and check in, because I am going to give myself some targets for the month of August. So that is basically my setup. The 4th week would go here, or 5th week if it's a 5-week month. But that is basically my budgeting setup that I'm using moving forward. I really like it because it's very in-depth. It captures everything that I always wanted to track, and it just gives me a lot of flexibility as well with this sort of system. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you have any questions down below as well, I'm happy to answer as best as I can. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this walkthrough. I hope that this was helpful for you, and I can't wait to, you know, continue to implement it next month, and, you know, we'll kind of budget together. So I'll definitely be sharing all of my processes a little bit more consistently now that I feel like I'm getting back into the rhythm of things. So thanks again for joining me, and as always, friends, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.